and good evening from sunny Los Angeles, California. Today we have the Respect the Tech podcast, another episode brought to you guys by the RMR Podcast Network. I am your host, Joey J. Ping. We have a very special guest today, Arnau Valdovinos. He is the big boss, CEO, founder of Cannamonitor. Cannamonitor is a very impressive group out of Spain. They monitor the cannabis global supply chain, specifically with a focus recently, right? A lot is going on in Europe, Arnau. A lot is going on. Barcelona, Spain, Germany, the Czech Republic. There's a lot going on. And so, Arnau, welcome to the show. Bienvenidos, Spanish. No?
For the invite, Joey. It's a pleasure to be here and discuss some data and some global trends, which, as you're saying, there's a lot going on in the last few months. Everything is
Yes.
accelerating.
It's going to be an exciting future for the global cannabis industry. We have a lot of importing, a lot of exporting. We've got a lot of tinctures and oils being made. Flower, it's getting going. Not huge just yet, but it's starting to pick up pace. And so, Arnau, talk to me. How did you start Cannamonitor? What got you inspired to do that?
Yeah, so I've been involved in the cannabis space since I was very young. In Barcelona, there's a big scene in the legacy market. So I was involved in the home growing movement, which is very big in Spain. Like over 10% of the users grow their own weed, actually.
Wow.
So it's a vibrant scene. And in 2018, actually, the medical market was starting to appear in Europe. It was still very, very small, as I will show you soon after some data from back in the day. So I was, from the beginning, when everything was getting started, there were big plans, but it was still very limited, actually. So it's been 7 years, and now we've had German legalization. We've had, a lot of progress in markets like the UK, like Australia, Poland, etc. So I've been involved in it all. And because in the Spanish market, it's still in this sort of legacy gray area, my focus has been very much focused on the international markets, and I've been one of the very few people that's actually gathering the data from all these markets, comparing it, and helping operators make sense of which markets does it make the more sense to go in, which strategies do we need to deploy in different areas of the globe, both from the production standpoint, but also from distribution. And now, for instance, in recent months, the telemedicine market has been exploding in some key markets. So every year there seems to be something new and something different.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Spain is one of the older cannabis markets there that has a structure, right? We've got the lounge model with kind of like you purchase points, you don't buy weed kind of thing, right? You buy tokens on a drive almost, or a card, and then you use those points to purchase. Now, what are you envision over the next couple years for the Spanish, specifically Spain's cannabis industry? Do you envision major changes, or are we going to see more of the same, Arnau?
Sadly, it looks like it's going to be a lot more of the same. However, there's still some reasons to be hopeful. So there's a medical decree to legalize medical cannabis that it's actually now being finalized. So we expect that after the summer, we can start registering products and patients can start getting legal access on the medical side, even though it's going to be very, very constrained at the beginning. But Germany started in the same way in 2013, and now look at them, So it seems like same as it has happened in the States or in California, you started with a very limited medical compassionate model, and then gradually you start expanding on it. And I think in Spain, because there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of professionals, there's a lot of passion, we are well positioned to capitalize on that, even though now most of the commercial operations are focused on exportation, mostly to Germany and other European countries, because there's still no legal access on the medical side in Spain.
Are they not growing cannabis for medical, like a commercial grade medical program? Are they just not growing flower at the scale that they really need to be at yet?
Actually, we indeed have growers that are EU GMP and are licensed, but for now it's only for exportation. So there's about half a dozen players that are licensed. Some of those focus on genetics, others focus on flower for exportation. But as I'm saying, no domestic access yet. Everything goes to Germany, Portugal, UK, etc.
That's crazy to think of that. Spanish cannabis, weed from Spain, grown in Spain legally per the European Union, is forced to have to go somewhere else. It's
It
crazy.
doesn't make sense. And
Is it? Are
actually,
you jealous?
because
Are you jealous at all? Because these other people get to smoke your weed, brother.
absolutely, absolutely. And because Spain at one point there was a vibrant also scene on the genetic side. There were a lot of seed banks that were like the first banks in Europe were of course in the Netherlands, but at some point many of these companies went to Spain actually and became established in Spain. So this is why there's a big concentration of professionals here, but we cannot profit of it that much. And actually, because the legalization will only involve extracts, the flower will still be, at least for the foreseeable future, purely for exportation.
Oh my god. Can someone get it right, please? Can someone get it right? This is so tough. They make us jump through all these loopholes and they try to make us be patient and slowly roll out these programs, right? Um, so we're more of the same in Spain. I appreciate that insight, Arnau. That's interesting. Do you have any data surrounding Spain's products or what they're importing and exporting currently in the higher amounts? Um, what are you seeing product wise that's being shipped out in larger quantities?
Yeah, so there's, like I said before, there's about half a dozen licensed entities. However, the largest players in terms of exportation are foreign-backed companies, one of which is Curaleaf, actually has a big processing plant in the south of Spain. So
Wow.
they are importing products from Portugal, actually, and doing extraction and processing in Spain for re-exportation then to Germany and to the UK. And then there are also a couple of commercial scale growers that are growing at a fairly large scale. So right now, Spain sits, I believe, in the sixth position worldwide in terms of exports. So there, Canada is of course still the dominant leader in
Yeah.
exportation of medical cannabis. They got a head start, and they have the regulatory process very, very well worked out. So they have a dominant position. Then there's Portugal, which is a clear second. And there's some emerging markets that are starting to appear more and more, like South Africa, Israel, Czech Republic, for instance, and Denmark, of course. And Spain is in this, North Macedonia. Spain is in this milieu as exporting between 5 and 10 tons a year in the last year, but it is
Wow.
growing year after year.
That is so interesting to think about. So an American, right? We're in America. I live in California. We're at the epicenter for cannabis, right? The mecca of cannabis, right? Supposedly. The reality is we're behind here in America. The weed, the products, maybe they're better, maybe they're not. Who cares? It's all subjective anyways, right? What you
Mhm,
like is what you like and what I like is what I like, right? So it's all different
mhm.
and unique anyways. But the reality is here are now the United States, Estados Unidos, we are behind in the cannabis world. There are these countries importing, exporting oil products primarily, a lot of extracts, right? Tinctures, right? A lot of low dose products, right? And we're just not involved in that at all. Um, Arna, what are you noticing Portugal and Germany? What specific items are they importing? Is it biomass or are they actually getting branded jars and branded tincture bottles and things like that? What are they getting?
Yeah, I think it's very important to make the distinction between the control regulated products, which go in the medical side, and then the hemp market. The
Okay.
hemp market, because in the US, because of the Farm Bill, it's legal. So the
Yep.
US actually can export like CBD isolates and the such, which is also a market that exists. But in
Mhm.
what's the regulated market as a narcotic, which is only for
Cannabis.
medical purposes, according to international law, with
Yeah.
some exceptions, like Canada, Uruguay, but mostly what's exported is for medical purposes. Actually, flour is still the dominant product that is exported.
Wow.
Um,
Okay, so that means that people are growing cannabis, they're growing flower
mhm.
in Canada, right? Some of that Canadian products, that's getting shipped to these other states. And if you have your medical card in Germany, I can buy flour from Canada and maybe some kind of oil or something from another country. I can buy from multiple countries in the same location.
Absolutely, which I would say it's an advantage from a product diversity standpoint, also from a cost perspective. If you had to produce in Germany, which has high labor costs, high prices for energy, not a lot of sunlight, so it makes a lot of sense to bring it from more advantageous jurisdictions. And this is why Germany, uh, they had some cap on the production, which has now been lifted. So they technically could produce as much cannabis as they wanted, but it's actually under 10 tons that are supplied from German production, whereas the import market this year is probably going to be around 150 tons. So we see that.
Wow. Germany doesn't even want its own weed. They want that. They want that. Canada. They want that. Colombia. They want that. They want that. That is crazy, Arnau. How interesting. How interesting. Okay, so let's talk about Cannamonitor. You've been running this company for how long, and what's the main way that you guys get hired? Like, if I wanted to pay you for something, what would that be? What would your services be that you offer?
Sure. So of course, in this industry, everything is changing all the time. No. So now, for instance, with the German legalization, all the attention, not only in Europe but also internationally, has been very much focused on the German market because it has a lot
Mhm.
of high potential. So then lately, I've been very focused on helping operators get into the German market, find commercial dealings, improve their operations to reach Germany, this type of thing. However, more generally, I work a lot with market entry. So this means I'm a producer, like you said, in Colombia or in Canada or in Uruguay, South Africa. I want to work internationally, and I've heard some things from the regulatory perspective, but I don't know what are the actual steps and which products are actually demanded in the target markets. So I've been
Mm,
doing a lot of work with this market entry, even though I also work everything related with the data in terms of helping commercial strategy for the most part, also raising capital, making sense of the market essentially.
yeah. So there's a variety of things that you can assist with in terms from a consulting standpoint or a business development standpoint or canna monitoring the data, right? Just monitoring the data and helping provide actionable insights. Those are going to be a few of the different ways, folks, for you guys to work with Arnau and his team there at Canna Monitor. I think there's a lot of value here to know what's being sold, where, how much, the future, and potentially the past. The past often reflects into the future because of
Absolutely.
psychology, habits,
You're right.
patterns, right, Arnau?
You're right. And this is why I'm very interested also in the American market because it's a trendsetter. So the varieties that are being produced in California that are doing a killing in the Barcelona clubs, I can find them maybe 3 months after they have launched in California. But the medical market takes maybe 2 years because the regulatory situation is so complicated to export
Yeah,
genetics from the US, to register them, to grow them at a commercial scale, etc., etc. This all brings time and a lot of expertise. So it's interesting to keep track of these trends from a product standpoint.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, for any of you guys that are out there watching, any of our viewers here today, if you guys have any data, if you guys have any insights, if you guys have any, and we need professionals, folks. We need the director of sales, we need the director of biz ops, CEOs, COOs. If you guys are interested in expanding into the European markets or the Latin American markets, you guys need to know these insights. You want to use the data to mitigate your risk, decrease the risk by knowing more information about these markets, about what's going on. All right, Arnell, I got some more questions for me. How you holding
There's
up over there?
mhm.
You good? What are you smoking on right there?
Actually, because I knew I had a dense conversation with you, it was pure CBD, no THC until after this podcast.
I like it. Big respect. Now, me on the other hand, I'm smoking some sour diesel from California. All the New Yorkers are going to say it's not real sour diesel, but I will confirm that it's tastes just like sour diesel. There's
Okay.
varieties, right? Even the same strains can all be different, right?
Yeah, yeah. I would like to see more of this because, as we will see later, the varieties that are available in the different markets, they are all the Cali type. There's a few
Mm.
European genetics that are famous. They are also famous in the States, like whatever, Super Silver Haze, White Widow, etc. But still,
You
most of it.
guys, you guys have one out there. I remember two strains for Europe. Europe has a lot of haze,
Mhm.
amnesia and hazes, a lot of that. I remember that in the Spanish clubs all over the place. There was the Cali for $20, right? The Cali stuff, right? I'm not trying to smoke that. Then the third thing was there was hash, right? There was hash. The
Mhm.
little cubes and bricks, there was hash. I loved all of that. I smoked a lot of haze. But on the flip side, I remember a strain called, is it, it's not, is it WAP? Is it called WAP? I
I'm
think
not sure.
you're not familiar.
Wapa.
I'll have to ask. I'll ask AI later and see if I can remember. But there's somebody told me about these European strains and how they tend to just be different. They tend to have their own flavors or strains or flavor profiles, and it's different and it's memorable. Right? It's very memorable. Uh,
Absolutely.
Arnau, let's talk a little bit about how your platform is used across Europe today. Who are some of the people that you're working with? What are the different types of businesses that you collaborate with in the space?
So I've been working mostly with producers. So that this means genetics, genetic breeders, growers, and manufacturers. However, I also work with distributors. I also work with retailers, so pharmacy
Mm,
chains, and I also work with telemedicine providers, clinics, etc. So I cover
wow.
the whole supply chain. Even though maybe because I'm based in Spain, which doesn't have access, and like I mentioned before, all the production is for export. My focus has been heavily edge towards the producers. So those are the bulk of my clients, even though I can help other type of players in the space.
Arnau, have you been to the States and gone to the dispensaries or been to Canada and gone to their stores? Have you
Actually, I
experienced that?
haven't yet. I'm planning on MJBs maybe in December, and that's
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
be the first time.
Well, I'm sure you've talked to people that have done it, though, correct?
Hmm.
Okay, so I'll be the first to break the stigma. Going to a dispensary that's adult use, 21 plus years old, legal alcohol drinking age in America is absolutely no different. Actually, I take it back. It's entirely different than going to a liquor store. Do you know why, Arnau? Because
Okay.
99% of dispensaries are cleaner, they're well lit, it's
Hmm.
friendly, and they all are educated on the products. Every dispensary I've ever been to, except for illegal ones in California, are cleaner and friendlier and a better experience than every liquor store I've ever been to, including Bevmo, Walmart, the grocery stores. When have you ever gotten help for your liquor or anything at those places for the most part? Never. So
Hmm.
every dispensary I've gone into, better than a liquor store, better than a smoke shop. And so what's cooler now is that you guys in Europe, as we get into this pharmacy model and as we talk about telemedicine, are now those are two things that don't even exist for the most part over here anymore. I don't know anybody using telemedicine for cannabis or hemp, and I can't think of anybody that's ever said they have in the past. They just look it up on Leafly, right? And so for you are now, what do you notice about pharmacies and telemedicine and their impact on the cannabis culture there in Europe?
It's a very good question, and actually, I would say that's the main difference across the Atlantic. So, in the US, because you have such easy access to the dispensaries, you do not need to get a medical prescription and go through the pharmacy and all of that. But actually, in Europe, because of the telemedicine, and not only that, but also mail order pharmacies, so you don't even need to go to the pharmacy to receive the product. You know, they can ship it through the
Wow,
post, and this makes it way easier. And this is behind the great expansion in demand in the German market. Actually, the fact that it's
interesting.
so easy to get a prescription and it's so easy to bring it home.
That's it's exciting because you would think in a medical dispensary market, right? This right here, folks, is my medical marijuana recommendation in California. This look, physician's statement, right? That's a real statement from it, right? This was $35 are now online, and it took me less than 10 minutes to do it. And they send you it via email, the PDF, you print it off, it's in my wallet. Easy as that, right?
Do you get any advantage? Like, why don't you go to just to a recreational dispensary?
They I these are used at recreational adult use dispensaries. Think of it as a Costco card almost, where I don't get to get it. I don't go. There are no medical only dispensaries left anymore. It's all adult use. But this gives me a small tax break, cheaper product, and then it also gives me the ability to buy more, right? And so the adult use legal limits for product are 28 grams of flour, whatever for edibles, probably like 7 grams for concentrates, right? They're not very high. And for serious patients that need higher doses, it's just not enough, right? So this product alleviates that barrier is what I'm getting at. And so for you guys there with the medical market, I would think that there's a barrier to access, but you're saying that the cards are affordable to get that recommendation, right? To go see your physician. Is it?
Yeah, now in Germany now you can get prescriptions for as cheap as free, or let's say more reasonably 10, 20 euros, something like that. So it's fairly
Wow.
similar, but also it's different because what you showed is a recommendation. So then you choose your own products, whereas physicians need to write actually which product you are going to get in the prescription. So it makes it
Oh,
a little
that's
bit different from this
crazy.
perspective.
So there's even though I even so and okay, so Arnau, back 10 years ago when it was these were required for everybody, right? You still could go to a medical dispensary and I could pick. I never had to be told what I needed.
Sure.
That's crazy.
I mean, to be fair, there are patients that are still choosing their own medication, and the
See,
doctor just oversees it, let's say.
see.
But let's say this is the main difference. The fact that in Europe, because we are following pharmaceutical standards, this brings a lot of obligations on the supply chain. Everything needs to be produced to the same high standards as normal pharmaceuticals with EU GMP, which impose a heavy burden on the producers to deliver in
Yeah,
that. But it also has some advantages because in California and in the US, you have such high taxes that make it very, very difficult to operate in the space with excise and all of that. Whereas in Europe, because it's a normal medicine, you just get the regular taxes, which are fairly low, just the VAT of 20%, something like that. So,
yeah.
uh, from some perspective, it brings more burdens, but from the other side, it also has some advantages.
Yeah, because America, we're such a capitalism market, right? That naturally it's like, cool, we'll let the states decide, right? The federal government will just manages the shit show, right? And the shit show is
Hmm.
50 states and I think two territories or whatever they're called. No disrespect to Puerto Rico, no disrespect to the Virgin Islands. I'm smoking a joint right now. So the point is that it's a shit show over here. We got 50 states with all different rules. There nothing is identical, but the one thing that is similar in each area is we basically have free markets with that, meaning we can raise money or we can do as we please with our businesses and get registered and all that, but it's still tough, man. Like those things you're saying, the taxes and just the cost of existing in some of these markets, it's definitely not easy. Arnau, you said you were smoking on some hemp so that way you were able to maintain focus. Do you see a lot of people smoking hemp across Europe and in Spain? Is that a normal thing for people just to smoke hemp and CBD products?
There's a little bit, same as in the States, every state is a little bit different. I would say in Europe it's even more so because cultural differences are deeper. So there are some markets like France, Italy, and Spain, or Greece, for instance, more in the southern Mediterranean part of the continent, that actually hemp smokables are fairly popular. It's a big industry, whereas in other markets it's actually forbidden. Like in the UK or in the Netherlands, you cannot access CBD smokables. So it changes a
Wow.
little bit country by country. It's of course same as in the US with THCA and all this market. It's way more unregulated than the medical side, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's still going and it's still vibrant. And the good thing is because it's not a controlled substance, international trade is way easier. So the US can export to Europe, and the US actually can import from, for instance, from some Latin American countries, some cheap biomass, CBD biomass.
Yeah. Wow. Arnell, you're giving me the game right now. I feel like my business acumen is leveling up here in the international cannabis space, man. Folks, this is a great time for us to just shout it out, man. Cannamonitor, Arnau Valdovinos here. Respect the Tech podcast. I believe this is episode 4 for us here, talking about his technology and the data that they have here for global cannabis insights. From Barcelona to Berlin, South Africa to Australia, Canada, all the way across the United States, down to Latin America, again, Central America. There's a lot of cannabis going on, folks. I heard you say, Arnau, Poland is in the conversation?
Interestingly so. It's been
Wow.
traditionally it's been a very conservative country. It's like the Texas of Europe, if you will, something like that.
Wow. I
And
had no
still,
idea.
even under conservative governments, they managed to deploy a medical scheme. And actually, the market has been in an upward trajectory. That's been very interesting. Only thing is, last year they did a crackdown on telemedicine that has put a little bit of strain on the market. But this is also a learning for other jurisdictions like Germany that now are this, or Australia that are now discussing similar restrictions. And maybe if the industry can self-regulate and uphold these some standards before the government comes and cracks down, this could be an advantage and ensure that the market continues developing in these markets.
Before we switch over to the some of the slides that you prepared, are now what was the issue with the telemedicine? What was causing the issue that made the government want to change the rules?
Yeah, because in Germany now cannabis is not a narcotic, so it's not as much of a problem. But all the other medical schemes, cannabis is still a narcotic, and they didn't the government and some conservative media outlets, etc. They didn't like the fact that it was so easy to get a prescription because you could essentially self-diagnose, introduce, I have back pain, and you didn't even need to speak with the doctor. So they went the harsh route and banned it all. Absolutely. Now you need a personal examination. In Germany, it's possible that they will mandate a first examination in person, and then you can do telemedicine, which would be a little bit more complex than it is now, that you can just self-diagnose and literally in a couple of hours have the product, but it's still a good model compared to a full ban on telemedicine.
I think ignorant American obviously had no idea about the original structure versus now. I only am familiar with going to get the card in person. It wasn't until, like, for first, it wasn't
Mhm.
until this one, after 7 years, right, where I got to do it only online. And I honestly questioned the validity of this because it was only online. You know what I mean? For somebody that might be like playing the system to get their card, right? Even though it is only $20, if someone like a kid was trying to get it, I would want them to be seen in person just for that matter. But at the same time, people are always going to do what they're going to do, and it's really none of my business. So big shout out,
Absolutely.
big shout out to them legalizing it with a structure, and then also too just a credit to the government for realizing they didn't like how it was happening. Maybe it was too easy. Maybe there were some problems, and them just deciding right away to make some changes. At least they didn't ban it full on. You know, one bad thing, get rid of scrap the whole project. Right? At least they didn't do that. And so, big shout out to Germany in that way. We're still seeing some progress. Always going to have some hiccups though. All right, now let's pull up this slide that we got.
Absolutely.
What are we
So
looking at here, Arnau?
this is a very broad perspective at the medical cannabis access worldwide. Well, in this map, we also have the geographies that allow recreational cannabis, and we also have with the grid the geographies that allow access to CBD products and the like. And I think the main thing that is immediately obvious from looking at this map is that there's a lot of white countries that do not have any access whatsoever, mostly in Africa and in Asia. No, so the geographies that are actually going forward with legalization are fairly concentrated in these 4 regions. So North America, which to be fair, in terms of value of sales, it's still around 80% of the global market. So
Wow.
it's still very much the focus of financial focus of
Canada
the
and
cannabis
Canada and the
industry.
United States smoke, eat, and drink and vape a lot of weed.
Absolutely, and you are the starters of this movement in a way. The trendsetters, like I said before. However, in recent years, we've seen more diversification in Europe, in Latin America, and also in some Asia Pacific markets like Thailand and Australia, which are now a focus of interest. And then the second thing that I think is interesting from this slide is the fact that pink is the most dominant color. So recreational jurisdictions, there aren't that many. We have Canada, we have the US states that have legalized, and then we only have like Thailand, which is now maybe backtracking even. Not, it's not clear still what the new medical regulations are going to entail, but it looks like the recreational Wild West is over in Thailand. And then we have other markets like Germany, but it's still fairly recent outside North America, the full legalization. And there are several reasons for that that have to do with whatever conservatism, etc. But an important one are the international treaties that only recognize the use of cannabis for medical purposes or for scientific purposes. So if you go on and do recreational legalization, you are going against international treaties in a way, which is not an unsurmountable obstacle, but it's still something to consider because every geography like Uruguay, Canada, that has legalized at the federal level has encountered the same problems actually. Not the US because it's at the state level, of course, but in the event of full rescheduling at the federal level, you would also have to see how to incardinate your regulations in these international treaties that you have subscribed, like the
Yeah.
treaties, international treaties on narcotics.
So that those are definitely some of the obstacles and some of the variables at play in terms of states that are legalizing or decriminalizing, right? As well as, well, that's going to be for recreational or medical, and then also to CBD. So these treaties all play into it. So this slide says the debate on cannabis legislation in Europe is heating up. German plans to allow recreational access. Other countries are likely to follow suit. So more movement in Europe is the understanding.
Absolutely. As you know, Germany is a dominant force in the European Union. It's the largest country and has a lot of political and economic influence. So the fact that they took the lead is likely to inspire other efforts. And actually, other smaller nations like Malta, Switzerland, and the Netherlands have, where even before Germany, they already had their own plans, even
Wow.
though in a fairly limited scale. So, for instance, in Switzerland, in multiple cities, there's already pilot projects that allow access to recreational cannabis, but it's only for a limited amount of people, a few thousands, in the framework of these experiments. And in the Netherlands, there's like over 400 coffee shops, the same that you see when you go to Amsterdam. But in 10 municipalities that do not include Amsterdam for the moment, they have also conducted a legal supply chain, and therefore the full supply chain is now legal in a few of the cities in the Netherlands, which is also a potential recreational market that is legal in the European Union.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot of upsides to adult use recreational legalization, right? We look at how much money alcohol has made over time. We look at the ability to have the money go into various things like infrastructure or paying
Mhm.
teachers more money or rebuilding schools, right? You know, there's a lot of positive things that can come from the revenue that is generated for the cities and the local governments in all these different countries. And so we've also seen a lot of data driven stories about how local, what is it, like, not to say the violent crimes, but like drug sales and drug crimes in local areas, it goes down once it's going through a legal and, legislated outlet right at the end of the
You
day.
are absolutely right. And actually, a very recent, the first results from the pilot projects in Switzerland are starting to come out. And actually, they found exactly what you said, which is not a surprise because it has happened in the States, it has happened in Canada, etc. But now Switzerland has proven it. And therefore, in their federal parliament, now they are discussing expanding the pilot project to a national program, which would be,
That's huge.
a second after Germany that enacts full legalization in Europe and would be a great thing. But there's other markets like Czech Republic, for instance, that are also making steps in the same direction.
Yeah. Man, how cool is it, man? There's just so much progress and change and motion going on across Europe, Latin America. I've been spending time in Costa Rica, medical market down there as well. Colombia, same thing. We're looking at Uruguay, same thing. We've got a lot of opportunities going on in these different markets across the country What are we looking at here, Arnau? What's this next slide you got for us?
Yeah, so this is only for medical sales, so we are excluding completely recreational and CBD, but we are looking at the historical sales, which I collect from official data of the different governments, and also my projection towards the future. And it's split between the flower market and the extract market. And what we see clearly is, like I said, when I started in 2018, the market was very, very small. I was helping companies that had in their business plans, projects to sell 20 tons in the international market, which is not a particularly crazy amount. But this was the whole market back then. So it took a long time to actually grow these markets, and the main driver has been regulatory change. So we can see from 2023 and 2024, there's a big jump, which is in like there's growing demand in a lot of international markets,
Yeah,
but mostly
30. It looks
German.
like 30 or 2029 jumped that month, and then 146, 136. Holy shit, that's a lot, man. Another 110,
It's,
and then another 100, basically. Oh my god.
so it's a growing market. The thing is, of course, this is all the countries that have a legal framework can supply this demand. So it's not like looking at one U.S. state where all the demand from the dispensaries in Missouri comes from growers in Missouri. This involves the whole world. And actually, before when we were looking at the map, that was only for demand. But in terms of production, there's actually a lot more countries in Africa, for instance, that can produce as well to supply international markets. So there's a lot of diversification in the supply and the production, but the demand is still fairly constrained in a few markets, even though it's growing at a very good pace, as you can see in this graph.
Wow, man. To think that I could potentially be buying weed from South Africa in a giant greenhouse when I go visit Germany or when I'm in Spain eventually, that's insane. That is so cool. All right, what are we looking at here? I see Germany, the UK, Israel, and who's the last one?
The last one is the UK. The second is Australia, actually.
That one is Australia. Okay, I reversed them. All right, so what do we got
Yeah.
here?
So in the last slide, we saw a global market of approximately 400 tons of available demand this year, but we see that it's actually fairly concentrated. This shows the evolution of imports over the last 4 years in the top four international markets that consume flour, because this reflects only imports of flour. And we can see that between Australia and Germany, they already accounted last year for about 150, so way over half of the global demand is focused on only on these two countries, even though there's others like Israel, UK, Poland, New Zealand, etc., that are coming along, but it's still a fairly geographically a small area that is actually demanding, regulated medical cannabis products.
Yeah. I would imagine that you're going to have better extracts in Europe than you are flour, only because of the sun. Just the sun element has got to play into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way and the amount of moisture. Now, of course, you can grow cannabis up in the mountains if you can get still, but you need light at the end of the day. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that'll be an interesting. That'll be interesting to see how the flower markets, whether it's greenhouses or these massive indoor grows down the road, how that plays out for these markets with a little less sunlight versus maybe a New Zealand. I don't know what the weather's like in New Zealand, but maybe there's more sun there, for example. I don't know. Or
They have a
Israel.
lot of climate areas, I believe.
So yeah, it's like it's going to be interesting to see just how the cultivation side of things play out and what's
Mm-hmm.
grown genetically. Um, what an interesting graphic to look at for us here: global trade in medical cannabis, and just these four unique markets, and to see their growth. Um, or in the case of
Yeah.
Israel, kind of like do its little dance there.
Yeah.
Uh,
This reflects imports. So, for instance, we discussed Germany already, that it's mostly supplied by imports, but Australia and Israel, this is not the case. There's actually a lot of local production going into the market. So while the imports in Israel look like they are stagnant, and actually the pricing has been going down as well, which has put a lot of strain on the distributors there. There's actually Israel is emerging now as actually an exporter. Last year they exported almost 5 tons, if I'm not incorrect at the moment. And same in Australia, their plans are to become eventually a net exporter and stop being so reliant on the imports.
No, that makes sense. I mean, that's how you kind of balance the act, right? And overall, flip the script to help your own economy versus helping others. I think at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, you might say that because, for instance, in Australia, in Israel, there were discussions about introducing a tariff, which is Trump's favorite word, on the medical cannabis products from Canada, actually, because there were concerns about price dumping, actually,
Mm,
because whatever, the Canadians had oversupply, so they can ship products at a fair, very discounted prices in Israel, particularly because in Canada you have such high taxes that eat into your margin. But internationally, as we discussed, this is not the problem. So given how low the wholesale prices are in Canada, that have been hovering around $1,000 a kilogram, something like that, a little bit more or a little bit less. They are still very competitive in international markets, so it's been tough on some of the local producers. But now they are coming along, like some have died out, but some national champions are emerging actually.
yeah. Man, this is interesting, man. This is like the Olympics of weed and information, man. This today's episode brought to you guys by Cannamonitor. Be sure to reach out, tap in. Arnau, what's your guys' website?
It's cannamonitor.com, and we have a lot more insights that you can navigate on different markets.
Nice. What else you got for us here today, brother?
Yeah, so
All
I know
right,
you
some
are very
more
interested in
insights
the
on Germany.
in
Let's
the
go.
exactly. I know you are very interested in the particular cultivars that are being sold. So I did this analysis for particular clients that want to assess which products they should be bringing to market, and
Wow.
it's interesting. Um, I would start by the sativa indica differentiation. I would say it's not so different compared to the States. We see that most of what's supplied lately are hybrids and mostly indica leaning hybrids. So there's a certain scarcity of sativa varieties. They only represent about 25%, depending on the market and the data in international markets, which I don't know, maybe some players can now there's a lot of talks regarding intercanopy lighting and new techniques to optimize sativas and long flowering varieties, and maybe we're going to see more of those in the future. But for now, I
Mm,
would say if we look at the varieties like Gorilla Glue, Mac, etc., they are fairly similar to what you could get in the States. So the gassy trend, I would say, has also reached international markets. So things like Gorilla Glue are very popular, particularly in Germany. There's even some rappers that are singing songs about Gorilla Glue, in German and stuff.
Smoking that glue, that GG. Let's go. You got the Mac on there, which is called Miracle Alien Cookies. We've got Jack Herrer, which would be that
Yep.
sour sativa. The White Widow, which is a creamy, frosty white green bud. We call that a
Hmm.
sleeper. Comes up and bites you in the ass. You get high later on. Frosted lemon cake. That's going to be something lemony and doughy. And then I think I saw OG Kush, that's my all-time favorite, so I'm excited to see that there right in the middle. That piney gas, ice cream cake, doughy gas, black cherry punch, fruity sour with a little bit of pine in there, and then that good old-fashioned are now that Ghost Train haze. Man, you guys love the hazes out there, those sours, and I do too. I tried at least four, maybe five of the hazes when I was there in Barcelona, and I very
Hmm.
much enjoyed the different like fruitynesses that there's like fruit that accompanies each haze. Some of them are more citrus, some of them are more berry. And then last but not least, that Cold Creek Kush, folks. I think this is very interesting. Arnau, talk to us about that one on the right. What's going on with that bar chart over there on the right?
Yeah, this is a classification of the strains by family. It's not perfect, of course, because if you have two parentals, you could be in two families at once. But it's more or less to give my clients a perspective of, by families, what is trending. No, actually, and we see that the cookies and the gassy strains are fairly dominant in the market. But there's also, of course, for the sativas, the hazes dominate, but we also see some trends with, like, for instance, the what I call the white related to White Widow. In recent months, there's been a lot of new product drops from this family in the German strain, and also things like the very classical Kush, very sedative indica to go to sleep or to calm your pain, etc. Those are
Yep.
also fairly popular in the market. So I keep track of the evolution, as because now in Germany you already get over 1,000 different SKUs of flower from all around the globe. So there's
Oh,
an immense variety. And as you know, if you have been an OG in the game for a long time, also strain names and the actual genetic, there's a little bit of doesn't always correlate, no. So
Yeah.
maybe you are interested in bringing, um, you know, um, a product with a certain name because it's popular now, even though the genetic maybe you do not fully have this famous cross from California, but you're still interested in bringing the lemon cherry gelato or whatever it is that's trending now in the market.
Yeah. Very interesting to think about the trends, the genetics, various patterns, the regions in which they're popular, the medical pharmacy model, telemedicine, delivery services, the digital age that we live in to get a hold of all these items. Very, very interesting. Oh, yeah, here we go. We got one for Australia. Talk to me about Australia here, Arnau. What do we got going on here?
Yeah, so this is the evolution of the number of products supplied, and you can see that they are actually flower is the dominant product in the market, even though it's one of the markets that is more open to launching extract. Before you were talking about this, and actually in some markets like in Germany, it's not so straightforward. It's fairly difficult because you need to comply with all this pharmaceutical legislation. So there are things like rosin, etc., that you cannot supply as such, but it needs to be actually manufactured in the pharmacy. And this brings a lot of complications to bring in, for instance, vapes, gummies, etc. In Australia, this is not the case. You can actually fairly easily, let's say, bring oils and vapes and gummies in the market, and they have been increasing over the last few quarters. However, we see that flower, even in this more open market that accepts all types of formats, flower is still is the queen in international medical markets.
Yeah, absolutely. By a very, very large margin. It's not
Yep, you're right.
not even close. All right, what
And
else
then
we got?
finally, I wanted to show you also similar to what we saw for Germany, but in the case of the UK. This is a little bit old data from a report that we did last year based on official data on the prescriptions in the market. But we also gain some interesting insights because most of the SKUs, because the producers are looking to sell at different markets, you tend to have similar SKUs in all the markets, right? Even though the UK doesn't have as much variety as Germany, but still you have all the same products. But still, what you find is that the top varieties are a little bit different always, which I tend to find interesting. Even I've worked with producers that sell the same SKUs into Israel, Australia, UK, Germany, and in some markets, for some reason, they tend to prefer some varieties. Maybe it has to do with how the distributor pushes it. Maybe it has to do with patient preference, But I always find it interesting that even though the supply is the same everywhere, we could say, the outcomes, the demand tends to be a little bit different. Here we also see in terms of the indica sativa, the same that we were saying before, that only about 25% of the market are sativas. The hybrids and the indica leaning hybrids tend to dominate. And another trend that's very important that is also relevant in the US, but also in international markets, is THC inflation. So in 2022, I calculated the average THC percentage in the UK was like 21%, and then in 2023 it was already like 23%. So it's slowly creeping up, the average THC content, because it carries, you can sell it for higher prices, it carries better margins, and the patients then, maybe because it's the only thing that gets labeled, patients are not looking that much at the terpene content or the parentals, the lineage,
Man,
etc.
not
They are really focusing
Europe.
on
Don't buy
THC.
the hype, man. Don't buy the hype. THC is not everything, folks. Come on. All right, all right. What's this one over here in the bottom right corner, Arna? I see the by irradiation status. Are people irradiating their cannabis there because it's got to be pharmacy certified and GUMP?
You are absolutely right because there's such stringent standards on microbiological content. Pretty much a big part of the flower gets remediated to lower the microbiological standards. The thing is, in Germany, they have a specific law that you need to comply with for irradiation. However, and therefore, players are trying to avoid going through this law and then using alternative methods of decontamination to avoid irradiating the product. This is something that happens only in Germany because then you look at the UK that doesn't have such stringent requirements on irradiated products, and there's way more irradiated products. Sometimes are the same products that in the UK appear as irradiated and in Germany as unirradiated. You could say some players are hiding it in Germany as well. There's same as in the States, there's also when you make the rule, you also make the workaround for the rule, essentially.
That's a great way to put it. And unfortunate, man. It's uh, good weed is ruined as soon as it's radiated, folks, and it's frustrating. It all tastes the same. Do you know what it tastes like, Arnau? Have you tried some? Do you know what irradiated weed tastes like?
I have tried it, and sometimes it's a little bit more muted in terms of, but I mean, it depends.
Tastes like, have
If
you
you, if
ever
you
gone into a basement, like a wet basement?
That's what it smells like.
It's what it smells like. It's what it tastes like, all the way
Mhm,
through. It might have a little lemon, maybe a little pine,
mhm,
but muted is it's muted, and then it tastes like whatever you cooked last in your microwave. You know what I'm saying? Like, ugh, it's so gross, guys. It kills me. And Arnell, people love to use this thing called ozone on their product too to kind of help with
mhm.
it. And it tastes like ozone after that. It's so frustrating. But we've gone over a lot today here, man. I really appreciate your time. It's been very enlightening and interesting. I've learned so much about the global cannabis markets, Australia, the UK, Germany, a big focal point here. And I appreciate you sharing your insights as well about your home there, Barcelona and Spain. I think they all are unique and bring something to the table, and we're looking at them do tons and tons and tons and tons of flower and importing and exporting products, and it's only going to go up. We're going to see more. We're going to see a lot more global exchange happening, and the United States is missing out. And so, folks, if you're watching this and you're in the United States, get off your ass and go vote and make sure we get cannabis federally legalized. Make sure you call and bug your local politicians and go vote so that way we can get some American cannabis in this global cannabis situation. Right now, we're only getting the hemp is the only thing getting out, right? These hemp
Mhm.
products, CBD products, and so America's got to participate on the bigger scale, on the global
Yeah.
scale,
So
at a
on,
greater
on
level.
on this line, I'm seeing of course, there's a lot more interest from the US in international markets over the last few quarters. And I see, of course, there's some companies like Curaleaf that are already have a presence in these international markets. But what I'm seeing, particularly in the last year or so, is a lot more genetics coming. There's a little bit of a regulatory process to register them internationally, but the genetics are eventually arriving in the international markets,
The
and also
licensing deals
brands.
are happening. The licensing deals
License
are happening.
Exactly, for genetics and also for the brands. So
Yeah.
a lot more American brands are now getting a presence in Europe, and we are here to help them make it successfully.
Let's go, man. Cannamonitor in the building. Arnau Valdovinos, thank you for joining us here today. Cannamonitor.com for more information. For those of you guys watching, like, follow, subscribe. Be sure to go check in with Cannamonitor, subscribe, and follow them on socials. All the things to stay updated on the global cannabis industry and the markets and what's going on out there. I appreciate you all for watching. This has been another episode of the Respect the Tech podcast. I'm Joey J. Ping of Respect My Region, and we'll see you next time. I love you guys.